Hi there, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching. And if you are parenting a sensitive child and struggling to push your child out of their comfort zone, then listen up. So we help parents of highly sensitive children break out of the meltdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks. That means that children who are struggling emotionally, yelling, kicking, hitting, screaming, throwing things at the wall, and you might be finding yourself throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And this is exactly the system and the problem system in the family that we help support and help parents break out of this pattern. And the challenges that your child is having are not developmentally appropriate, especially if they're happening on a daily or multiple times a day basis. So children who are shutting down, refusing to have conversations about their emotions, refusing to follow through on general everyday tasks, as well as struggling to experience new things like camp or school or new teachers, etc., are struggling with this emotional problem, especially if they feel deeply, if they experience their emotions at a more intense level than their peers, or perhaps you recall doing so as a child. And if your children are struggling on a regular basis, then this is obvious that a temperament type could very well be the cause. So if your child experiences the world at a deeper level, and you may be wondering how you can support your child when they experience such emotional strife in stretching outside their comfort zone, right? If you notice that your child will not be able to tolerate any real world demands as they get older, this can create a dichotomy, especially if you're parenting in a two-parent household. A big disconnect between one parent and the next. We see lots of parents struggle with this. If one parent is really trying to think ahead and support the child in building emotion management skills, in communicating more effectively without yelling or screaming or losing control, and the other parent is wondering if the child can handle it. And this can lead to a lot of challenges with parents, and you might be having the same inner battle yourself. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. If your child doesn't feel comfortable or doesn't seem to be comfortable in managing their emotions or in handling everyday challenges, they seem to really struggle if they're frustrated, really struggle if they're sad, really struggle if they are anxious, then it is important for you to stay tuned to today's show. So let's talk about the effects of not having the confidence to handle challenges first, right? Why do we need to support children in managing their emotions and in managing disappointments in a safe and effective way without throwing things, hitting, yelling, kicking, screaming, or losing emotional control and feeling like life would be better off without them or wanting to escape in some other way? Well, bottom line is they won't be able to hold down a job, right? That's usually what we jump to first. Secondly, is that they won't be able to be happy in emotionally healthy relationships, right? So marital relationships, friendships, community, contributed to the community, participate in church activities, or live their life's purpose and whatever that might be in their career or in parenting themselves, right? So that's the long-term objective and understanding. And it's also true that you're parenting a 4-year-old or a 9-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 17-year-old, right? So your child has some time to build, to demonstrate that skill, right? And it's also true that your child has the opportunity now to demonstrate that skill, and you're experiencing frustration as a parent if you haven't been able to get them there, right? You might be worried yourself. So one of the side effects of dealing with the meltdown cycle is wondering whether or not your child can handle challenge, whether or not your child can operate emotionally safely in day-to-day life, right? You might see a lot of inconsistencies. You might see your child be able to manage their emotions in school and not lose it, or not throw things, or not call people names, and yet your child falls apart at home. Or it could be the opposite scenario. And some of you might not see your child be skillful consistently in any community setting, whether that be a home or school or extracurricular, etc. You notice that your child is struggling in every avenue. And highly sensitive children specifically struggle with generalizing skills. So it's very likely you'll see a lot of inconsistencies if your child is struggling in the meltdown cycle. And as a parent, you need to be clear that your child is struggling because of the skills that you need to teach them. Now, we know that highly sensitive children learn emotion management skills through their parents and are more capable of learning that when the family dynamic is emotionally safe. And that doesn't mean that I'm expecting you to assume that I am telling you that you're a bad parent, right? No, I did not say that. What I am saying is that many children who are sensitive, who don't feel understood by their parents, experience what's called invalidation. And what that means is that they are feeling disconnected from their parents, they're feeling misunderstood, and that is emotionally unsafe for a sensitive child, especially, but for all children. So when your child doesn't feel safe emotionally in their own home because of the mismatch in parenting, this can create a host of problems. And chronic invalidation can lead to chronic self-harm, chronic emotional strife, and suicidal actions and risk-taking in adolescence, in addition to bigger challenges, bigger risk-taking and life-threatening behaviors all the way through adulthood. It does not shift when sensitive children grow up in an invalidating environment. So when we look at the need to break out of this pattern right away, it is critical. It is critical for you to reverse the trajectory of your home. And I know that many of you who are listening to this show and who attend any of my trainings, you have been working on this. So don't take this advice or this topic as invalidation or an accusation, right? If you are receiving this feedback as an accusation, then that is your own shame to work through, and that's clear that you need these skills as well, which is a very good indicator as a parent that you are struggling in the meltdown cycle as well. We see this day in and day out. We help our clients who are stuck in the meltdown cycle learn to manage their own shame response and to shift out of shame very quickly, as well as avoid having shame reactions to feedback and start to look at challenges as opportunities much easier. Because if you're not able to do that, then your child will not be able to do that in a consistent manner. So this is one of the things that we teach directly. So when we look at the challenge that you have and the supports that you need to put in place, and why this is so important is because when you go the other route and think that your child is not capable, or worry that your child is not capable, and then lead from that worried, fearful place, your child will develop the following challenges into adolescence and adulthood. Number one, a lack of independence and self-sufficiency. So especially if you're arguing with yourself or another parent in the house that your child needs to be independent, yes, your child absolutely needs to be independent, and following your child's fears and letting your child's fears take the lead in how you stretch them outside of their comfort zone will create the pattern that you're trying to avoid, a lack of independence and self-sufficiency. Children do not learn to do things on their own and rely, if they are consistently relying on their parents to solve problems for them, all the way down to getting dressed beyond the age of 4 independently, and caring for their body independently, etc. So this is absolutely something that young children can be capable of doing consistently, as we see and teach our clients to do all the time. Now, it's also important to recognize that if you don't address this comfort zone stretching skill for your child will develop poor coping skills. Your child will not be able to build coping skills, and they will not be able to manage strife and frustration consistently. So as an adult, they will continue to struggle. We've worked with adults in our program and the work that we do who report not learning these skills in childhood and continuing to not have emotion management skills in adulthood. And while they put on a brave face and are high performers and really effective in their careers, in the medical profession and even in the helping profession, teachers, etc., they truly report having a big pattern of numbing themselves to emotions and compartmentalizing their experiences. And it is important for you, if this resonates with you, that this is something that you work on immediately. Now, children don't develop resilience if we save them from all of their problems, right? So that's what, and when that happens, we actually keep the anxiety going. Okay, this is really important. Anxiety perpetuates when a child does not have the skills to experience strife and struggle. All living, growing things have to experience strife and struggle and feel capable of overcoming them in order to thrive, right? Even plants vibrate and push through the soil. So your child needs to be able to experience wiggle, waggle emotions and intense demands on their time and on their growth in order to thrive. And your child will need to be able to tolerate that without losing it, without losing control of their emotions and their behavior. And that is the skill gap that your child has. It is not a deficit that your child has. It's not something broken with your child and something that they're incapable of. And one thing that we know is that when parents start to take responsibility for their children's emotional state, that children often lack self-confidence. Your child will start to behave in a way that demonstrates that they can't handle challenges. And this is a side effect of not stretching your child out of their comfort zone. We'll also see continued behavior patterns, right? No child was put on this earth to be miserable. And if their parents think that they are incapable of moving through that misery, they will start to make concessions for demands on their time and on their child. And as a result, their child will stay stuck. So it is important for you to support your child in stretching outside their comfort zone. We're going to talk about the principles of doing that later on today. And it's also important that when children don't have rules and boundaries, they will start to stretch what little boundaries they have in order to feel seen and understood. And they will continue to stay out of control in their behavior. So they won't learn self-discipline. This is where we experience the side effects of enablement. The inability to follow through on direct and consistent directions and direct and consistent, the inability to follow through on step-by-step directions and consistent responsibilities on their time and expectations on their time management has to be something that a parent can support a child in managing. So the last thing is that if you develop a pattern of saving your child, then your child will start to expect it. So what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about letting your child flounder and just looking at them, right? Or staying silent or turning away or expecting them to quote unquote self-soothe. None of that is effective. Or talk themselves out of managing their big emotions, or remind themselves later if they are experiencing frustration. None of that works. Children do not develop inner speech until more thoroughly middle school years. So your child will not be capable of talking themselves out of ineffective behavior. They need your leadership. They need your guidance. So we have to take neuroscience into account when it comes down to the strife and struggle that your child is having, in addition to observe that your child's brain is very capable of learning skills through you as a parent, and that can happen in a paced way. So a couple of principles when we think about lovingly stretching your child outside of their comfort zone. And number one is that coddling cripples courage. What do I mean by that? I mean that when your child is saved from their experiences over and over and over again, your child will not learn how to be brave. And you also can't expect your child to immediately be brave and tell themselves to be brave, and you tell your kid to be brave if they haven't learned the skill to manage their emotions of fear. So benefits of growth and pushing your child to try new things and to take risks helps them build confidence over time. And that leads to resilience. And you need to teach your child how to get curious about that skill set rather than stay fearful and judgy about that process. Now, the next one is that the best protection for emotional experiencing and emotional resilience is exposure. Your child needs consistent exposure to you telling them that they can handle big challenges by holding them accountable, not by your words. Your words will be fruitless if your actions do not match them. So you are actually much more effective if you teach from a place of action rather than teaching from a place of lecturing. Your child needs to be able to handle transitions. Your child needs to be able to handle big, scary experiences and do this from a place of practicing being courageous and practicing risk-taking. So what do I mean by that? I mean that my child at home, she is almost 7 now at the time of this recording, has climbed the stone fireplace, and I sat on the couch watching her and coaching her to get back down, and then redirecting her to go to rock climbing places and hikes where she can effectively climb and not break her face, right? So I did not rush to pull her down. I did not panic. I did not respond. I expected her to manage her own body and to take risks without panic, right? So this is something that I practice in my home, and we teach our clients over and over again, and I've been doing that since before I was a parent, right? I've been working in this field and doing this specifically since my master's degree over 14 years ago, and it's also true, or about 14 years ago, I should say, and it's also true that it is necessary to practice in my own home, right? Your child needs to be able to manage challenges, and recently we've been speaking about summer camps and summer activities and all of that for you guys, and I do the same thing, right? My child goes to camps and she's sensitive and she experiences new things, and she can tolerate those changes, including being mistreated by one of her peers. And one of the works that we did together is how to acknowledge the difference between bullying and mistreatment, bad words and inappropriate behavior, and when to ask and talk to an adult, and when for her adult me to take into consideration what the other adults need to be informed, right? So she and I worked together to come up with a plan to set boundaries with a peer who was not behaving appropriately. And then I took the second half of that into my own hands by working with the adults and alerting them what we had planned so that the adults could handle the other child and the other child's behavior, but my child was expected to handle her peer relationships. And obviously that requires discretion and a clear awareness of what's safe and what's not safe. I would never send my child into a physically or emotionally damaging and dangerous situation just to let her figure it out. Just like I was when, my parents didn't know any better and told me to ignore bullies. That is not the generational pattern that we continue in our home. And it's also true that my child was feeling capable after working with me playfully and curiously, so much so that she was interested in teaching it to her friends. And she did that in different avenues. And my daughter will even record videos with me to practice this, and we share this with our clients. Why? Because immediately, when you have a sensitive child who feels resilient, that sensitive child can immediately be a leader. Sensitive kids know what's right from wrong. They feel capable of teaching others, and they can communicate that in safe ways without lecturing or going on the moral high ground and being staunch judgers when they are capable of managing their emotions. And obviously my kiddo is aware of the family business, and she's happy to serve the families that we work with. and do that from a place of inspiration. And this is important, right? You're raising a leader in your home. You're raising a child who thinks much bigger and much more creatively than 80% of the population. And so they need to be able to preserve their emotions and their capability without bending over backwards, become people-pleasing workaholics, or try to martyr themselves to save the rest of society, right? They have to have boundaries. And that first comes from you. If you are demonstrating what we call passive parenting by letting your child continue to yell, scream without any firm communication or strategic behavior management, then your child will not learn. Now, what do I mean by that? Strategic behavior management. You've heard me talk about punishments don't teach. You've heard me talk about yelling and lecturing are ineffective. So we don't do any of that here. Timeouts are shaming. Any sort of corporal or strategic behavior components related to counting or threatening or anything like that. None of that works. You have to increase curiosity, support your child in playfully managing them without ignoring them if they don't have a skill. You cannot send your child away to figure it out for themselves. So your child needs to be able to build that creativity, because if you solve their problems for them, they will stay in that lack of creativity. Children will not be successful in the workforce if they are not creative. Now, if you're raising a 6-year-old, you cannot teach your child to behave like an adult when they're 6, right? You have to use neuroscience and emotional development to understand what's appropriate to expect of a 6-year-old. And same goes for a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old, etc. You have to understand your child's brain and how your child communicates effectively. So for the sake of time and the understanding that this is a complicated subject to talk about, we talk about principles here on this show rather than particular techniques or how-tos, because this problem is pervasive in your home and a quick fix is not going to work. Next, the third principle is that stumbles today lead to triumphs tomorrow. Your child needs to be able to tolerate failure. You cannot save your child from every experience, and you need to be able to support your child in a way that helps them break out of this fear so that they are growing up to be adults who can tolerate challenges and who can stay persistent. Your children will experience life effectively and enjoy it when they are not saved from their challenges. You know, my child, not in any point in our discussions of this challenge she had with that peer, jumped to the conclusion that she shouldn't go back to camp. Why? Because she's not interested in staying stuck, because she feels capable, because she feels tolerant of negative experiences, even though they are inappropriate, even though she didn't like it, right? And the child made a verbal threat that was not appropriate, and she knew that her adults can help her, and she trusts adults to continue to help her, and she feels capable of advocating for her needs. And that's what all highly sensitive kids are capable of doing when they have these skills. So you have to support your child's efforts. You have to help your child recognize when they're doing something that is hard and they can keep doing that hard thing. It's very important to cheer your child on, that their efforts are rewarded, not their product, because your child will screw up. They will need to know that it is okay to persist. You can't just be focused on supporting your child's end results, because they won't stay focused if they don't achieve immediately. So things like sticker charts and rewards and bribes and threats keep your child from struggling in order to learn. And children learn best through experience, not through lectures, not through just stories of what might happen, and because that is an anecdotal threat in their mind. They need to be able to practice and to feel capable of continuing to practice living. They are living real life, obviously, but they also need to be practicing how to change their experiences if they are worried about something or if something is unsafe. Just like you expected your child to practice articulating their needs when they were learning how to speak, it's important that you support your child in practicing interacting with other people and doing that in a safe way, or learning not to tolerate inappropriate behavior from their peers or potential friends. So your child will not be able to tolerate any sort of feedback or constructive criticism from a boss in the future if they can't tolerate constructive criticism and support from you now. So it is time to act now if you want our help to do that, because we teach strategic and specifics to our clients. Then I'm happy to support you in breaking out of this pattern. Myself or my team are available on a call to break out of this and to teach you exactly what needs to happen and so to set you up for success. So if you want our help to, or if you're wondering if our work would be most appropriate for your family, then I encourage you to book a call with our team. We are happy to have that conversation. That conversation is free. On that conversation, we will have a clear look on what truly is the cause of the behavior, whether or not the family dynamic is the cause of the meltdown cycle, or if there's something that's different or deeper than that. We will absolutely set you in the right path so that you know exactly what steps you need to take, whether that's directly with us on that same phone call, or if that is another path forward. As we have hundreds of calls every single week, we do not have thousands of clients every single week. That means that we send many of our families to different resources, and we're happy to have those conversations. Okay? So super excited to have that conversation with you and to work through what your next best steps are, dependent on your goals and your perspective of what's possible for your family. Now, that conversation requires a back and forth and isn't something that we can just have over a quick message. So we book a conversation with you on our calendar. You go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk if you're parenting a child who is 8th grade or under. Now, at the time of this show, it is summertime. So if your child is moving into high school, then you would go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk. And that's for 9th grade, rising 9th graders and older, all the way through graduation. And we would have a conversation with both you and your teen to stretch them out of their comfort zone. So they stop staying in their room, refusing to try new things, potentially get a job now and work on that skill, etc. And build that level of independence that you know that they are capable of. All right. If you need our help to do that, we are happy to have that conversation. Look forward to talking to you soon. And